Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, guys, something very related to that, actually. Something pretty interesting happened last week. Amazon Labor Union President Christian Smalls went on Tucker Carlson's show to talk about their David versus Goliath victory against Amazon. So, you have the most significant labor leader in the country going on the most popular right-wing show in the country. Here is how that went. It's a short segment, so I'm just going to go ahead and play most of it for you. Take a listen.
Sandy Cortez spends a lot of time telling you that she's on the side of the worker. She's like a modern wobbly. She's the Walter Reuther of our day. And that's why last year she vowed to stand alongside striking workers at Amazon's Staten Island warehouse. And we're for that because they need the help. But at the last minute, Sandy Cortez bailed on the whole thing. And that infuriated labor organizers who just won a big vote to unionize the Staten Island facility. Now, Amazon is stepping up its effort to crush the union. Amazon has just banned words like union on its employee chat app. Christian Smalls is a union leader at Amazon, and we're happy to have him join us now. Christian, thanks so much for coming on. So were you surprised that Sandy Cortez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has said repeatedly that she's on the side of the worker against the corporation, wasn't standing with you at the barricades?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just her. It was all of them pretty much. It's not
fair.
I don't want it to make it just between us and AOC because, a lot of them didn't show up. And, once again, we have no ill will against them. We know that whether they showed up or not, they didn't make or break our election. We just had to continue to organize.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird moment because, I'm on the right. I've never been particularly pro-union, but it does seem like Amazon needs some counterbalance. Like, it's this huge company. The workers have no power, and maybe we could, share a little power with people who work there. So that's my view anyway. So tell us where you are in your organizing efforts.
Well, right now, we're fighting for a contract. Amazon's disputing the election results. So we're in walking and chewing bubble gum at the same time. We're fighting for a contract. We're preparing for another election in 2 weeks on April 25th. We're going to be voting at a second location directly across the building that we just unionized. So we're in the thick of a fight right now, a legal battle. And, we just have to stay grounded and pretty much begin our campaign all over again.
You'd think that Amazon would be open to a union, wouldn't you? And it's a very progressive company. Why do you think they're trying to thwart you from organizing?
Amazon hasn't been unionized in this country since the beginning of its existence, and they're very anti-union. They created a system that hires and fires people. They created a system that they have full control of the working people, and having a union obviously brings representation for the workers that'll benefit the workers at the bottom, like myself, hourly associates, entry-level workers that don't get the right to negotiate. So forming a union gives us the right to collect the bargain with the company, form a contract to protect ourselves. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with the Amazon Labor Union. We're hoping that we'll be a catalyst for something that'll take place nationwide.
Well, I certainly am rooting for you. I mean, maybe if they throw some more woke slogans at you, you'll forget you can't feed your family.
Right.
Chris, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Okay, there's a lot to note here. So first of all, amazing tax-rich jacket. Second of all, Tucker clearly most interested in the AOC rift angle. And as I've shown here before, Fox News is so committed to attacking AOC that they will even temporarily pretend to support workers unionizing in order to attempt to own her. But Christian Smalls is no fool. He quickly parries that point, noting that he's got no ill will and that no politician showed up, before moving on to the reason he wanted to do the segment in the first place, to explain to Tucker's audience why workers need unions. Second, I actually laughed out loud when Tucker described Amazon as a progressive company. There is nothing progressive about a tax-dodging monopoly with a business model reliant on chewing workers up and spitting them out at a rate of 150% turnover every single year. The fact that they are aggressively union busting, including using blatantly illegal tactics, should disabuse everyone of the notion that Amazon is in any way progressive. And that should be made obvious by the report Tucker cites from The Intercept, revealing that Amazon was banning words like union and wage slavery and even restroom. Finally, Tucker reluctantly himself makes a pretty solid case for unionizing. He acknowledges he's not in general a big fan of unions, but that Amazon seems like it needs some counterbalance. That's what he says. He goes on to say, it's this huge company, the workers have no power, and maybe we could, share a little power with the people that work there. Exactly. That's literally all that unions are ultimately about. He closes by saying, quote, "I certainly am rooting for you," while making sure to take a shot at, quote, woke slogans. But you know what? If opposition to woke slogans will bring any part of the institutional right on board with unions, I am perfectly fine with that. Now, I see this entire segment as nothing but a win. Chris quickly parries the AOC beef, gets straight to his message, and Tucker's large conservative audience, numbering in the millions, gets to hear a conversation that is overwhelmingly pro-union from both the host and the guest. It is not a close call at all. If you believe in the labor movement and worker power, this was absolutely wonderful to watch. But predictably, a liberal meltdown quickly ensued, and the attacks on Krys were as silly as they were dishonest. So one of the folks who runs Media Matters took a single screenshot from that interview with a chyron mentioning the AOC beef and used that to characterize the entire segment, tweeting, quote, "Yeah, this isn't it," before going on to explain, quote, "Carlson is a hateful bigot and he uses his program every night to spread his hateful bigotry. Someone like Smalls appearing on his show only gives Tucker credibility he doesn't deserve." Guys, listen. Tucker is a popular host who already has a massive audience and a primetime show. Christian Smalls cannot do anything about that, but he sure as hell can provide that large audience with some actually useful information for a few minutes, which is exactly what he did. So Media Matters dude continued saying, "Furthermore, spare me the whole get the message out bullshit. On his best nights, Tucker has 1% of the population tuning in. I'd imagine it's the least likely to be swayed 1% of the population in America. There are more effective, less harmful ways to get the message out." Okay, dude. Then if Tucker is so insignificant, what are you so upset about? And further, what is even the point of your project at Media Matters if the right-wing media ecosystem is totally fringe and totally meaningless? He closes his thread with this condescending mess, quote, "Tucker Carlson is your enemy, and if you don't understand that, you have no idea what we're actually up against." Imagine having the audacity to chide an actually heroic working-class movement leader for failing to follow your arbitrary and failing code of DC conduct. Some of these supposed allies of black and brown people sure do have a lot of patronizing contempt for the largely black and brown working class, as it turns out. Now, Krys has been underestimated from the beginning. He's been smeared, he's been dismissed, and he still is to this day. Listen, put your minds at ease, professional liberals. Krys Smalls has got this. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he sure doesn't need your dumbass advice. As Dr. Thrasher put it on Twitter, quote, "Very curious how many liberals want Krys Smalls, whose rising coalition is winning in arenas they never have, expect him to conform to their norms and behaviors even as their coalitions are consistently losing." But there's also something bigger going on here. Listen, part of the right has basically boxed themselves into a rhetorical corner during the Trump years. They were happy to say the words working class, pretend like they support workers while giving tax cuts to the rich and stacking the NLRB with union busters. Their support for workers through symbolic gestures like putting workers on stage at the RNC or Trump donning a hard hat and pretending to mine. It had all the substance of Nancy Pelosi kneeling in kente cloth or Amazon putting Black Lives Matter up on their homepage. But this rhetoric was basically safe, so long as workers were powerless and represented no real threat to the established order. Now, they're faced with the uncomfortable situation of their rhetoric about support for the working class bumping up against actual working class people challenging corporate bosses, who the right, by the way, has characterized as woke or progressive. And while Republican elites didn't mean a word of what they were saying about workers, the American people, by and large, actually did. That's why Americans of all political stripes overwhelmingly back the strikers at John Deere. That's why support for unions is near record highs. That's why the number of shops filing for union elections has jumped up 57% year over year. And Tucker, by the way, is not the only right-wing media figure who's offering at least modest, tacit support for the Amazon union effort. Our wonderful friend and new Breaking Point's partner, Max Alvarez, just joined Megyn Kelly for a thoughtful interview in which Megyn acknowledged both that trickle-down economics was not working and that right to work was a misleading concept.
The whole thought about right to work states and so on was that it would give corporate America to do right by the workers. Like you don't want to be told what to do by the unions. Do right by the workers, and you won't have to deal with this problem. And if you don't do right by the workers, things are going to go south. They are going to revolt at some point. And we're seeing, it just feels to me like we're seeing more and more of that. Love the corporations not doing right by the workers, not wanting to take care of their staff in the way they should. And I mean, I know you've been talking about Kroger. That's a great example. Now we're seeing Starbucks, big union push there. The numbers are, okay, Starbucks said quarterly profit jumped 31% at the end of last year to $816 million. That's amazing, per the New York Times. Meanwhile, more than 200 Starbucks locations across the country in some 30 states have filed petitions to organize because the old trickle down doesn't seem to be happening outside of the coffee pot.
You're right. I mean, like in the end, it really is that simple. Like, the trickle down theory was nice. It sounded good in principle. We have enough data to see now it didn't work. It didn't work for us, right? It worked for a very small few people, right? But for the vast amount of workers who, as I said, have been working longer, working harder, and been more productive over the past half century, and yet have seen the majority of their wages stagnate as the cost of living continues to go up.
Now, just as recently as a few years ago, you would never hear anyone, even nominally on the right, acknowledge that unions can be good, right to work sucks, and corporate giants are abusive, and that trickle down is a lie. Never. And while I'm not deluding myself that this represents any meaningful shift among elected Republican elites, it does open the door for exactly what we are witnessing among regular people right now. A newly energized grassroots labor uprising which crosses cultural, geographic, and political divides. I might also add that the opportunity to talk about actual working class power with an ideologically diverse audience is part of what makes me so proud of this show. We've had quite a few folks who consider themselves to be on the right reach out to tell us how they are rethinking long-held anti-union views. And every time I see one of these messages, it absolutely delights me and would not be possible if we were just here preaching to a choir of people who share my views on the left already. Now, if the Democratic Party was worth anything, they would seize the moment. They would use this opening to press the case on labor rights. They would fight like hell for the PRO Act and obliterate any politician, Democrat or Republican, who tries to stand in the way of the rights of workers to organize. Make it clear to the American people who actually stands with working people and who just wants to use them as political props. Instead, elected Dems will settle for being marginally better than the Republicans by staffing the NLRB with non-sociopaths, by offering rhetorical support for union drives before quickly walking it back, of course. And the professional liberal activist class will chastise working class leaders who don't abide by their DC code of conduct. And Chris Smalls, the Amazon workers, and the Starbucks workers, and many more will keep winning whether or not a single elite actually cares to help. This was such a clear demonstration of so many of the things that we've been. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.